Hello, this is Michael Buckoff from BetterTOEFLScores.com. Today, I want to talk about quoting, paraphrasing, and summarizing, three different methods of citing material that you will use from the TOEFL iBT listening and reading materials. Keep in mind when writing papers for TOEFL iBT or for university courses that whether you quote, paraphrase, or summarize, you will need to cite the author and page or date in your text and include a list of works cited at the end of the paper. In the case of the TOEFL iBT, you will not have complete reference information, so you can refer to the sources as the reading passage and the listening passage. As a writer, you will need to decide which method of citation you should use. Quoting, the direct wording of a source into your own writing, is used for several reasons. Number one, the wording of the source is memorable, and rewording it would destroy the meaning. The second reason we use quoting, the words of reliable and respected authorities will bolster your position. The third reason, you may want to highlight the author's opinions. Number four, you may wish to cite an expert whose opinion either challenges or differs greatly from those of other experts. And the last reason, you may want to discuss the source's choice of words. These are different reasons why we quote. Now let's take a look at how we do it. Suppose you're referring to the exact words, and I'm going to make it kind of simple for the purposes of what we're doing. Let's say a simple sentence like, to give is to give with all one's heart, and let's say that you've taken this from a TOEFL iBT reading passage. You should introduce this quote by using a variety of present tense verbs and a variety of sentence styles. Now, did you get what I just said? I said present tense verbs. A lot of students, they're always going from present to past, past to present, but when you're writing about literature or reading passages and you're summarizing those things, you can actually use the present tense when you do it. Let's talk about some various techniques of how to do this. Here's the first way. The author in the reading passage asserts an opinion about giving. Notice the colon. Then you might say, to give is to give with all one's heart. Again, notice I have quotations there, I have my period, and I have my close quotation marks at the end. That's the first way to do it. Now remember, there's not just one way to do it, there's a lot of ways. And the more ways you use, the more variety of ways you use to introduce your quotes, the more advanced writer you actually are of academic English. It's pretty simple. The second way, the author in the reading passage says, notice in this case I'm using comma. Why? Because this idea is not really a complete idea. It needs to be connected to the quote. Notice I begin the quote with the quotation, and then to give is to give with all one's heart. Again, notice we have the period here. We have the close quotes there. Now a third way. How about tacking the signal phrase at the end? So you begin with the actual quote here. You see that? Quotations. To give is to give with all one's heart. Notice comma. Then we have our close quotes. Why the comma? Because we need to say who has said this statement. So then I've put this. Comments the author in the reading passage. Notice a lot of times when you put the signal phrase at the end after the actual quotation, the verb comes first, and then you actually have your subject there. Let's take a look at number 4, the fourth way. The reading passage claims that. Now here, notice there's actually no punctuation here. Why? Because I'm saying the reading passage claims that. So this is my connector, which means I need to have a subject and a verb to go back to this connector. So, and the quote is fitting in essentially with the grammar of my own sentence. So I'll say something like, the reading passage claims that to give is to give with all one's heart. Notice I begin the quotations here, period, here, and then I actually end with the quotes there. That's the fourth way. Okay, here's a fifth way. You could say something like, again here, I'm beginning with the quotation. You can tell by the use of quotes there. To give is to give, comma, discusses the author in the reading passage, comma, with all one's heart. Wow. If you can do this one correctly, it definitely advances your writing skills and it makes you look like you have a very sophisticated style. However, if you have no idea how to, this is called the interrupted quotation or a blended quotation, without seeing an example like this, I do not recommend that you try this because you're probably going to have trouble. Well, let's look at it again. To give is to give. Notice the actual signal phrase is in the middle. Discusses the author in the reading passage, and then of course with goes back up to this. We have with all of one's heart. So that's the actual fifth way to do it. Now, in addition to using different types of sentence styles and signal phrases to introduce your quotations, you need to use a variety of verbs to introduce quotes, paraphrases, and summaries. Let's take a look at some verbs that you can use that are effective in helping you introduce ideas other than your own. Acknowledge, admit, agree, analyze, argue, assert, believe, claim, comment. How about concede, conclude, confirm, consider, criticize, describe, disagree, discuss, dispute, emphasize, explain, express, find, illustrate, interpret, maintain, note, observe. How about oppose, point out, refute, remark, report, respond, show, speculate, state, suggest, think, and finally write. So there are. Paraphrasing is when you restate a source in your own words without adding any opinion to the source's ideas. Basically, you are retelling the information in roughly the same number of words. Number 1. To avoid intellectual stealing or plagiarism, you must use different words and grammar to convey the ideas when paraphrasing. Number 2, learn to find synonyms. Choose 15 to 20 words in a reading passage and think of synonyms for these words. Try not to look up the words in the dictionary. 3, use only your notes when writing a paraphrase of part of a reading passage. If you have not taken any notes, paraphrase without looking at the reading passage. After writing a paraphrase, you can check your paraphrase with the original reading passage to see if your writing was factually accurate and if you used different grammatical structures. Number 4, preventing you from quoting too much, paraphrasing is good for ordinary material, which is not especially important. Finally, let's talk about summarizing. This is when you present only the main ideas of a source without the details and examples. It is made up of words supplied by the writer. The first point, summary, allows you to condense large amounts of writing from a source into your own writing. And finally, summaries should provide balanced coverage of a source and should avoid any hint of agreement or disagreement with them.